We have Steve Chaggaris and our CBS News senior political editor Jamelle Bouie is chief political correspondent for Slate and a CBS News political contributor. Both of you all are in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I just want to first talk about the attacks that Chris Christie obviously had for Rubio yesterday in terms of what he had to say and really going after Rubio more than he did some of the other running candidates that are in top place, considering you have Donald Trump and, of course, Ted Cruz. What did you guys make of that, and in terms of what Christie had to say to Rubio?
Well, first, I think we all knew that Rubio was going to be the target last night after his performance at the Iowa caucuses, coming in a strong third. It was very clear that the establishment lane of candidates, the Christies, the Jeb Bushes, the John Kasichs, they were going to really train their sights on Rubio, and we saw that very early in the debate. Christie really sort of jumping in at Rubio and suggesting, one, that Rubio is not experienced enough to be president, and two, that he's a typical Washington politician by dodging questions and then turning to talking points. And as this was going on, Rubio was sort of falling into the trap.
And you know, he also seemed rattled at times. We counted 4 occasions where he used a specific line. Let's play that.
Let's dispel once and for all with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. But I would add this, let's dispel with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. This notion that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing is just not true.
There it is.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
The memorized 25-second speech.
Well, that's the reason why this campaign is so important. Because I think this notion, I think this is an important point. I think anyone who believes that Barack Obama isn't doing what he's doing on purpose doesn't understand what we're dealing with here.
So I'll ask you, Jamelle, what did you make of that?
I thought it was a stunning failure on Rubio's part. There are moments for politicians that are bad, not necessarily because they're substantively terrible, but because they confirm key criticism of that candidate. Rick Perry's oops moment in 2012 was a great example. Rick Perry, dogged by accusations and criticism that he just wasn't ready to compete on this stage, and then he forgets a line, and that confirms it. Likewise, Rubio's entire career thus far has been almost defined by this accusation that he was callow, that he didn't really have a substance or a core. And then on stage, when he had a perfect opportunity to dispel this, he failed, and he failed in a spectacular way, and in a way that's actually pretty funny and television friendly, which is even worse.
It seemed like Jeb Bush and Donald Trump also tried to hit Rubio with some of those attacks. Did they do enough?
Well, they piled on, right? So it's Chris Christie started. He's the one that threw the grenade, and it exploded over that 4-minute period. And then Trump and Bush piled on, and it's one of these things where it's going to be interesting to see what kind of effect this has. We're all going to be looking very closely at where Marco Rubio places on Tuesday in the New Hampshire primary, and if he doesn't do well, I think a lot of people are going to point to what happened Saturday night. This was an opportunity for him to really solidify being the alternative to Cruz and Trump. And in a spectacular moment, he really raised a lot of doubts, I think, among the establishment folks who wanted to see somebody emerge, whether that's Rubio or one of the others. And they were really looking toward Rubio after his performance in Iowa. But the performance on stage last night, I think, is raising a lot of questions about whether he's ready to do this.
And I'll add go ahead, Jamelle.
The other governors on stage, John Kasich, Jeb Bush, Chris Christie, they did very well. So it scrambles the field a bit. It makes it more difficult for an establishment voter to choose, which only harms Marco Rubio, and it benefits Trump. Trump's voters are solid, they are secure, they are not leaving. And so Trump can maintain his core of support while everyone else fights for whatever's left. And it's honestly a disaster for establishment Republicans.
And speaking of Donald Trump, he's still hitting Ted Cruz over what he's called dirty tactics in Iowa. Last night, Trump again said that he stole Carson's votes. Should Trump be moving on from this with New Hampshire 2 days away, or is this fight hurting him at all?
Well, it's doing two things. One is he's trying to obviously raise doubts among voters in terms of Cruz and being an honest broker. But at the same time, he's also trying to give a little boost to Carson, keep him in the race, because Carson is playing for the same types of voters that Cruz is, this evangelical vote. And so as long as Carson's in the race, and as long as Carson's getting 5, 6, 7, 8, 9% of the vote, those are votes that the thinking is are coming away from Cruz. And so the fewer votes Cruz gets, the better that is for Trump.
But in terms of those tactics, and he was referring to the email that was sent out to his supporters, Trump supporters, actually from Ted Cruz, where he stated that Ben Carson had suspended his campaign temporarily. Do you think people care about that anymore? Do you think that that matters?
I think voters are looking for integrity. I was just at a Marco Rubio event this morning, and I was speaking to Rubio supporters and undecided Republicans, and one word that was consistent among them was they were looking for someone with integrity. Lots of people who praised Ben Carson in particular, they weren't going to vote for him, but they thought he was a good man. I think this attack on Cruz, especially given the kind of muddied waters about immigration, it speaks to a weakness he has. He might be willing to do or say anything to win, and I don't think Republican voters are looking for that, or at least they're looking for someone who can hide it better.
And I also want to add, too, though, that Carson has some of the highest favorables among Republican voters, and so he's going after the accusation that he's going after a guy who is very well liked. While he might not have the support among Republicans, he's very, very well liked among Republicans. And so, you know, it's sort of like, is he bullying the nice guy?